So today is October 10th. It's World Mental Health Day and hashtag letstalk. So I figured I would talk a little bit about mental health and my mental health journey. Anyone that has been following my work over the last few years has probably noticed an underlying theme around mental health and mental illness, and ultimately, I guess the struggles, the struggles of being alive and needing to pass through that type of challenge. This comes not from so much an intellectual curiosity, but of course the intellectual curiosity is there, but because mental health is something that I've struggled with throughout the course of my life, actually. There's a couple big stories for me in my life of mental illness. The first, I guess, takes place around 2009, 2010, when I was suffering, I guess 2008, 2009, when I was suffering from drug-induced psychosis, actually, and after the drugs were removed from my life, I guess a resulting depression that came out of that, a fairly serious one, that in my book, Decomposing the Shadow, and in other interviews, I've talked about my use of psilocybin mushrooms to help resolve that, and of course my work is very strongly aligned towards the destigmatization and the utilization of psychedelic medicines in our society. But another big one for me actually came about in 2014 when I had a near-death experience, I guess, a near-death encounter, a medical emergency while I was in the jungles of Peru, and I was actually on ayahuasca at the time, though I believe ayahuasca wasn't so much the culprit as it was an amplifier of what happened. The experience was extremely frightening, and sometime later, it's a long, convoluted story, but I moved home here to Kitchener, where I live now, and out of where I was living in the West Coast, where I had a lot of friends, a lot of people I could openly talk to about what I was going through with psychedelics and whatever. But when I got back here, I didn't really know anyone, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to, and my parents would have been very frightened if I told them I had nearly died, and so I held it in. And though I imagine there's a lot of factors there, I believe holding it in is one of the reasons why that frightening event eventually it blossomed into a full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder. And from, I guess, the middle of 2015 until early 2015 until the end of, we'll just say the end of 2016 into 2017, I was riddled with anxiety and panic attacks and depression, and I was really struggling. And one of my tendencies that you might know if you follow my work is that I tend to intellectualize things. Intellectualism is one of my defense mechanisms, and it's also one of the ways that I try to grasp at what's happening. You know, intellectualism didn't solve my problem, didn't solve my illness, but what it did is it drove me to learn more and more and more about why I was in the situation I was in, what that situation is, and how in the hell I could get out of it. And one of the biggest pieces that I learned in that time is that a painful event doesn't necessarily become trauma, and depression just doesn't come out of the blue. It's something that it emerges over the course of time as a result of how we engage our experience, and how our experience is represented in our social interactions, and the type of the nuances or the health of our social environment. One of the greatest steps I took towards my healing actually was becoming fully transparent with my parents about what I'd gone through and what I was going through, and over time learning more and more, not only to just be able to talk about it with other people, to say, you know, I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and I'm going through depression and I have anxiety attacks, but also to work with a therapist that helped me go back into those experiences in a way that enabled me to be back there, make sense of it, make story out of it, and not be overwhelmed by anxiety with it. And it was a very long process, and I'm happy to say that the therapy that I received really supported me in my healing. one of the greatest limitations I think we have here in our society is the fact that we don't talk about what's going on. And we don't talk about what's going on for multiple reasons. One of those reasons is that mental health is super stigmatized, or mental illness has been super stigmatized. And so there's always this fear of judgment. And our society has this implied story about resilience and strength and pushing through and just being strong. And yet it's an unreasonable expectation for most people, and it tends to manifest as this shame or guilt around not doing good and not being okay and being a burden to other people. Whatever it is, there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes up for not feeling okay, and so we hide it. And when we hide it, then we can't have it be seen, we can't be held, and we can't be supported. And over time, not talking about it for whatever reason is what contributes to things getting to a point where they become life debilitating mental illnesses. And so being able to talk about it and being able to be transparent about the things that we're going through is not only a means by which we can find healing once we're in the depths of it, say with counseling or with some form of psychotherapy, but it can also help us not really fall into that. If more of us talk openly about our mental health and our mental illnesses, and the challenges that we face, the less stigma there will be, and the more permission we give to other people to speak openly about their challenges. And being alone is a hard, tough place to be when you're suffering, and that's not what humans ever really had before this. The social reductionism of the nuclear family and the I generation, existing in my little iPod. We lived in community, and we could be open with everyone around us, and that's an essential nutrient. And so talking is important. I feel super grateful to have passed through my experiences with post-traumatic stress disorder and to be free of them. It's something I feel grateful for every day, and I couldn't have done it if I were not able to have had space held for me to go in to talk about it. If I hadn't been able to eventually say something to someone about what I was going through, I don't know where I would be now. If you currently are facing some sort of mental health challenge and things feel empty or hollow, or like you're alone, hopeless, helpless, like there's no escape, it's not true. You're not alone. You don't need to be anyways, and there is escape. And don't be afraid to reach for help, either in your community or through the suicide helpline, which I'm going to put up here for Canadians. It's right here on the screen, or checking in wherever you can check in to get some support. Thank you to the sponsor of this video, BetterHelp, for reaching out to me and encouraging me to make a video here for World Mental Health Day. It felt really meaningful to be asked, and it feels really meaningful to have been sort of encouraged to share my story and to feel like I have joined in on a part of something that could be as positive for others as being able to be open to talk about my experiences has been for me. BetterHelp is an online counseling website that gets you linked up with much more affordable counseling, and it can get you linked up with a therapist in as little as 24 hours. If you head to jameswjesso.com/BetterHelp, it will link you over to the site. You can also check out the link below in the description. Also, I just want to encourage, if you are feeling suicidal, to contact the suicide helpline immediately. The number is written in the description below. Thank you for all that you are doing in this world, whether you're struggling, have struggled, or supporting people that are struggling. We can get through this together.